Hey babes, welcome back for another episode of the Babe That's Bonkers podcast. I'm your host, Kaylee Faria, and as always, I am super excited to be here, super excited to have you here. Today's episode is going to be about grounding practices and other hippy dippy things like that, but per usual, before we jump into the meat and potatoes of today's episode, I've got a little bit of a life update for you. I am feeling super duper hyped today. I have had just a really fun, creative morning. This morning, I did a self-portrait photo shoot. It was better than I expected, honestly. This is something that has been on my to-do list for a long, long time. Essentially, this week, I have been trying to finish all of just a handful of special projects I've had floating around in my head because I just got a new job. I start working next week and that'll be exciting. I'm going to be a brand ambassador for this company and hopefully it'll be a good time. Kind of nervous to be entering the corporate world per se again, but I have all my side stuff kind of in motion at the moment, so I'm hoping that all of my happy, fulfilling hobbies will help me get through that and all that jazz. Anywho, I'm sidetracked. So this self-portrait photo shoot is one of those projects, something that's just been on my mind for a few months for a number of reasons. One, I have very few recent photos of myself. As I've kind of mentioned before, our bodies are ever changing and that is super normal and super human. But also, that being said, when it's been a few years since you've had a decent regular photo taken of you, you just look different. And, it's nice to just keep things up to date here and again. And another reason why I've been wanting to do this self-portrait photo shoot is because it makes me super uncomfortable. I love being behind the camera, sitting in the creative seat. That is my comfort zone. And as an artist, I think it is important to continuously be pushing myself outside of my comfort zone. And I think, a self-portrait is a way that it was just my way of doing that, I guess you could say. I just thought that a self-portrait would be a great way for me to get out of my comfort zone and try some things new and kind of just think about how I perceive myself and how I want to be perceived. I feel like it's really easy to be overcritical about the way you look and stuff like that. Easier whenever you're at least feeling good for the most part. But I don't know. I'm just trying to jump back into a mindset where I am just really appreciative of the body that I exist in. My consciousness only gets one, and this is it. And I want to give it some love because it allows me to do absolutely everything, and it deserves some gratitude, in my opinion. And I don't know. I also feel like the self-portrait photo shoot was very much just a self-love moment. I don't know. There was a lot that goes into it, and the vanity aspect of it isn't the most important, but just kind of going through and seeing all these pictures of myself, some of them which are very awkward and stuff like that. Because again, this is just a tripod on a timer. I'm not I can't see what I'm doing while I'm doing it because I'm the subject type thing. So there's a lot of trial and error going on, and it was just interesting looking at myself and seeing all of these bad pictures and honestly just not caring, which was a really nice feeling. I think the version of me who existed 5 years ago could never have felt that way. I think she could have only ever been self-critical. And yeah, I don't know. It's just nice to notice that at least in that department, I have grown a lot. And it was also cool seeing the good pictures of me and just being wow, I am kind of cute. This is kind of fun. Let's just keep rolling with it. And once I kind of started seeing a few good pictures. It just got more and more fun, and I started being silly and doing like all these different things, and it was just a good time, and it has me in a very good headspace this morning. I thought it was maybe going to put me in like a really insecure zone for recording today, but it's done the opposite, and I'm loving it. I'm enjoying it. So that was the first chunk of my day. Podcasting now will be the second chunk, and that's just going to make today an amazing day. No other way to go about it. So I'm excited. Another little life update for you. Recently, I was listening to the Unpublished podcast with Amy McNee and James Weinstock, and they were just talking about this concept of fostering scrappiness that I really, really loved. Honestly, I love pretty much all of their content. Both of them are writers, artists, and Amy puts out a lot of content out there that is just really, really inspirational and motivational for artists, just kind of screaming to the universe that, like, artists, we need your art out here in the world, whether you're in the beginning stages, whether you've been doing this for years, like, no matter what, like, we need it. It's important. And I have, like, convinced, one of the little voices in my head to be her voice, and it is what is motivating me to attempt all of these artistic projects that I'm doing, motivating me to attempt podcasting. And this just other little tidbit from their podcast I listened to is just going to be another mantra in that little voice in my head that I will not let be silenced by the other scared, fearful, insecure, whatever voices I have also existing in my head. Like, this voice is going to be the loudest voice, and this voice is going to be constantly screaming at the top of their lungs that, like, my art is important. My art is valuable. If I want to make it as an artist, I have to be fucking delusional, and I have to believe in myself more than anyone else. And I just have to never, ever quit. That's actually Naruto's voice in my head, to have the strength to never give up. We can get into that another day, probably whenever my boyfriend's little guest or something. It'll make more sense then. But anywho, she is that voice just saying, like, you have to be delusional. Now, since I've been listening to the podcast of her and her husband, and he started talking about this whole concept of, like, fostering scrappiness, like, just the combination of those two things are exactly what I need to hear, and it's exactly what I need to be telling myself if I want to, like, do this whole content creation thing, this whole artist thing. And I'm just eternally grateful that, as I'm attempting to be this, like, positive voice in the void, in the universe, on the internet, that there are also other really positive, unique voices that are shouting into the void that is the interwebs and all of that. And I just feel so lucky to be hearing them, because, like, where would I be without it? You know what I mean? Like, that's something that's really crazy to think about. And I think about all the other, like, influencers, podcasters, artists, content creators, anyone who's creating anything that has, like, resonated with me. I am so grateful that, like, I connected with them even for a split second on social media, because they have impacted my journey and they have influenced me. And that's why I want to be on this journey of being an artist and being a storyteller, because I want to be that voice for other people. I want to be able to inspire someone. I feel like I just have to give back, because these people have given me so much. And I think that even though I'm just, a 23-year-old baby adult, I have a lot of, I don't know about wisdom, maybe you could say, but, like, life lessons at the very least to share with the world. And I don't know, it was a really wonderful episode, and I highly, highly recommend you check out their podcast, the Unpublished podcast. They're also wonderful to listen to because they're Australian, so that's really, really fun, and just, like, some sprinkles on the Sunday, Anywho, I will stop fangirling over them. Maybe another day. I do really want to have an episode where I am just, like, entirely fangirling about all of my role models and idols and everything like that. I think that could be a really fun one. So yeah, maybe that'll be coming soon to you guys. I should write that down. Anyhow, I'll remember. Maybe not. The next life update I have for you guys is I bought everything to make cream of broccoli soup. Now, we all know that since it is fall, it is autumn, it is now soup season of the soups. And cream of broccoli isn't probably many people's favorites, but it was always mine. As a little kid, my grandma would always make it for me. I remember just like going to the store with her and she would get the little like soup packet and then we would get a bunch of broccoli and then we would go home and she would make it and it would be delicious. And here's where I have a predicament. I cannot find those little packets anywhere. And I don't know if it's just because I moved to Arizona, so now the grocery stores we have out here are different. But I feel like most of the food we have is the same, especially things that are like really processed seasoning packets and stuff like that. So I'm just like, where did it go? Where did my nostalgic broccoli soup go? And I haven't been able to answer that question. So alternatively, of course, I went to Pinterest and it took a lot of digging because everyone makes broccoli cheddar soup, which, don't get me wrong, is also really, really great. Broccoli and cheddar go great together. I always put like broccoli and like ground beef in my regular cheddar mac and cheese to make it like a more well-rounded meal. Like, I know that they go well together, but it's not what I had when I was a kid and I want nostalgic tasting soups. So I'm gonna try my best and it'll probably be better since I'll be making it from scratch, but it is disappointing that sometimes it's just not the same still. Like, I don't know. I love my grandma's cooking. Like, I have so many fond memories about just the whole family getting together, eating dinner and stuff whenever I was a kid and whatnot. When I think about my grandma's cooking, there are a few meals that were definitely from scratch. But when I really think about it, she probably thought that like all of these like packaged, like boxed, canned, whatever meals with like instructions and everything like that were freaking genius. Like all the hard work taken out of it, that is definitely just the kind of perspective I could see her having, especially because she took like a microwave cooking class whenever microwaves became really popular and learned how to make everything, like birthday cakes included, in the microwave. So she could just forego the oven and stove as often as possible, which is so funny looking back and just like thinking about myself and my lifestyle, how I don't even own a microwave and I try my best to make as many things from scratch as possible. You know, I'm not perfect. Our society doesn't want us to actually do that. So it's pretty challenging unless you're like fully homesteading, which is the goal someday. I can't wait for like a decade from now or 5 years from now or whenever in the future, because the timeline to me is unknown. But I know at some point in the future, I'm going to be living on my homestead with all of my veggies and fruits and animals. And I'm going to be looking back on episodes like this where I'm just like talking about that being my dream and just being like, holy shit, I did it. I'm here. And though I'm not there yet, I can manifest for the future and whatnot. But yeah, that turned into quite a tangent. Let me know if you have a similar experience with broccoli soup or any other soups or anything else that just like existed when you were a kid but has now just like poof, gone missing. You know, super weird stuff. Spooky. So that's all for the life updates today. Enough rambles for now and whatnot. So we're going to jump right in to the meat and potatoes of today's episode. I feel like there's another idiom or metaphor or whatever that I could be using, but it's fall. I keep cooking meat and potatoes for like every other meal, so we're just going to keep on rolling with the cozy sayings. Anywho, to dive into grounding practices, we're going to start off with talking about routines. I think that having a routine is just incredibly grounding and is just like the perfect example of what like being grounded feels like, I guess you could say. I think that our bodies, with the whole circadian rhythm and everything going on within, just craves routine at the end of the day. We're meant to be living this cycle where we're awake with the sun and asleep with the moon and all that jazz. And I think that when we are doing that to the best of our ability, and of course we're all unique and we have shit to get done throughout our lives. So, it's okay if we're not perfect about waking up with the sun and going to sleep with the moon and whatever, like, especially now when it's winter time and the days are just shorter, at least my partner and I, we just have to get up before the sun, and it's definitely much harder. Thankfully, we have like this hatch sunrise alarm, whatever, that puts false sunlight into our room to help us wake up while it's dark and whatnot. All to say, like, we don't have to be perfect, but whatever like our routine consists of, we should try our best to do the same thing every day for the most part. That way it kind of provides our bodies with clear expectations, and they just fully understand like what's going on in our lives and what they need to be capable of. I think this kind of goes along with how exercising provides you with more energy. It's kind of a backwards thought when you first think about it, because you're like, oh, well, I'm doing more movement, so isn't that like spending more energy? How am I going to feel more energetic if I'm like using it all? But I think that whenever you make it a part of your regular routine, it provides your body with a clear expectation. It's like, oh, we are moving and using energy regularly, so I need to make sure that with all of my processes and whatnot, that I'm converting things in a manner that provides my body with more energy so I can keep doing those things. Does that make sense? Fuck, I wish I had feedback from you guys. Like, when I have questions like that, really just like snaps me out of the whole conversation. Is like, yeah, you really are just talking to yourself into the void. But I hope it makes sense for you, and I hope that, it's a helpful thought, at the very least, of course. I also think that routines are really grounding at the end of the day, because they essentially determine what your lifestyle is. Whether you're intentional about it or not, you have a routine. I try my best to be really intentional by like waking up at the same time and, having breakfast, doing the skincare, getting ready, taking care of the dogs, watering the plants, yada, yada, yada. My boyfriend and I eat dinner at some point and usually watch a show together and fall asleep, go to bed. That is our routine. And every element of it might not be the most intentional. Like, we fall asleep watching TV all the time. Super normal. Not my ideal routine habit, but it is the routine that I'm currently existing in because it's what's actually happening. You know what I mean? So whether you're trying to or not, you have a routine, and that routine is setting up a set of expectations for your body to like understand, so it can continue to be capable of meeting the expectations that you are giving it, if that makes sense. I think it does. I think it makes sense. I need to stop asking that because you're never going to respond. So I think that, great examples of being intentional with the routine to kind of give your body better expectations is just, waking up, going to bed at the same time, eating meals at the same time, moving regularly, stuff like that, all of those things send messages to your body and helps regulate your circadian rhythm. And why this is important is because, it's how like all of your hormones stay in check, and like all of this like contributes to your overall mood and feeling of well-being. I'm not a scientist, so if I'm like misinterpreting any of this sciencey stuff when it comes to the circadian rhythm, please feel free to correct me in the comments. I want this to be a two-way conversation type thing. But from what I've understood, all these things just affect one another. Your blood sugar, your hormones, yada, yada, yada. All of it contributes to how you feel, and how you feel contributes to like what kind of mood you're existing in. And we want that to be a pleasant one, at the very least, at the end of the day. So all I'm really trying to like say here or establish or whatever is that, you know, implementing routines or just being cognizant of your routine and maybe just trying to like take control of it in whatever ways you feel you can, you know, can contribute to that feeling of being grounded. You know, I feel not grounded, very chaotic and like overwhelmed, like everything is just like spazzing out. Actually, frazzled. Frazzled is the word I often use. Like in those moments, I'm like, I feel frazzled. It's the first thing that pops in my head. So I'm glad that came back so I could explain that. But I feel frazzled whenever I do not have a routine or the routine is not being met, because that contributes to like me not meeting my basic needs, which then contributes to just like me feeling even more frazzled. Like it's a negative feedback loop. I think that's the proper use of that term. So if we can just, you know, control it ourselves to the best of our ability when we can, or just be self-aware in those times, like, oh, I'm feeling frazzled because I'm not putting enough focus into taking care of myself. Like all these things I'm talking about, I kind of group in the bubble of taking care of myself. And it is very, very hard to do that. Taking care of yourself is so hard, even when you're an adult who's very smart and capable and all of that. Life is just hard, but it's important to keep trying. So that's what we're going to do. And we're also going to move on to the next grounding practice, which is journaling. I have had quite the journaling journey, I guess you could say. Like writing in a diary or whatever is something I have attempted to do since I was a little girl. There's probably some really embarrassing half-started diaries out there. I don't think I ever made it past the first like quarter of the pages though before forgetting about it or chucking it, and then, you know, months later buying a new one at the next book fair because this one was cooler and had like a different kind of lock on it or something like that, or like pockets or a fun invisible ink pen or some shit like that, you know. Just childhood thoughts. All to say that I believed that journaling was writing about your day like every day, and it took me a really, really long time, like probably not until like 4 years ago, so 20 freaking years it took me to figure out that writing in your diary every day is a bunch of bullshit. Doing something every day is such a crazy expectation to have of yourself if it's not like one of your needs, I think. Because if it's not one of your basic needs, then the rest of your needs become flexible because every day is unique, I think. And frankly, I don't need to journal every day. That's not helpful for me. That's actually really, really stressful. If I put the expectation on myself to journal every single day, then, you know, I'm going to try to start this habit and I'm going to get 5 days in and then I'm going to forget, or I'm just going to have a really busy day, or I'm going to feel some type of way. Something's going to happen and I'm going to miss it. And then I'm going to feel like a failure because I didn't do it every single day. And now my journal is missing a piece of my story or whatever. And these are just all things I used to believe that I now realize don't actually matter at all. That is not using journaling as a tool. That is attempting to create an obsessive memoir of your life. Okay? And if you are able to do that and you find that helpful or fun, like, good for you. I'm not trying to like yuck anybody's yum by any means. I'm just saying, like, if you think that's what journaling is, and if you find journaling to be really, really overwhelming because of that, then change what you think journaling is so it's not so overwhelming. And then you can actually use it as a tool to better your life. That's what I'm trying to say. For me, in order to like use journaling as a tool, I had to establish that I can journal in many different types of ways. And each of these different types of ways can be like a tool or a modality to use the tool of journaling to help me when I'm feeling different feelings, if that makes sense. So like, the first type of journaling that I'm going to go over is the daily diary entry type thing. This is something I only really do if something very special and significant happens in my life, where the what's of the day, just what happened, really, really matters to me. So for example, like, I maybe did a diary entry like this whenever my boyfriend and I said, I love you for the first time, or something like that, because that is just a really special, significant day in my life that I don't want to forget. So, that's whenever I would bust out the classic, like, diary entry journaling style. But other than that, I rarely have the expectation on myself to, like, try to recount, like, the day's activities and, like, everything that happened and everything we said and yada, yada, yada. That's just too much. Like, you already just lived the day. Like, you don't have to write about it too unless you really want to. And I only do that whenever it's a memory that I hold very, very dearly to myself. The second type of journaling is kind of similar, but a little bit different. Instead of being focused on the what's, the whole like accounts of the day, it's a type of journaling I use whenever I need to process how I feel, more so whenever I'm just like very emotional. I call this like story time journaling. It's something I'll do after maybe like a stressful event, if I've maybe gotten into an argument or something with a friend or family member, or something happens like a stranger catcalls me at the grocery store parking lot or something like that. Just the type of situation where it has caused me to feel emotional and overwhelmed in some type of way, and I need to like recollect myself and also process the events of what happened so I can figure out how I need to move forward type of thing. That's kind of whenever I do storytime journaling. And I'm not at all like, and for storytime journaling, I don't try to have like a perfect like I don't try to like write out what happened in the situation perfectly. I'm just like writing for the sake of writing, like writing without ever intending to reread these things. Like, the point isn't to make sense. The point is to get everything out of my head and onto paper so it can live somewhere else that is not in my head. Otherwise, it's going to stay stuck there and it's going to start circulating with all the other thoughts that are stuck there. And that is not fun. That's a pretty stressful time. So we have journaling, which helps. We've got tools. And now we're going to move on to number 3, which is my favorite, the brain dump. This is the kind of journaling I do whenever I have too many thoughts. Like, there are just too many, like I said. And I'm not writing for the sake of remembering anything. I'm writing for the sake of giving my thoughts a place to live. And, once they have a place to live, I can look at all of them and I can decide which ones are important and which ones I need to engage with and which ones I can just let be on their merry way. The brain dump is super helpful for me because I am a really, really big overthinker, and I also spend a lot of time ruminating on thoughts and coming up with a bunch of different scenarios when it comes to these different thoughts. Intrusive thoughts also play a big part of this whole overthinking whatever, and just doing a brain dump really helps. Like, it is by no means revolutionary to just write out your thoughts, but there is just something about the action of taking your thoughts and either writing them out or turning them into like actual words coming out of your mouth that is just so therapeutic. I don't know, I just think it goes to show that like our thoughts are meant to be shared in some type of way, shape, or form. They are not meant to just live in our minds forever, endlessly. That's how we go crazy. This 4th type of journaling, I keep using like both hands, so this is technically like 8, but I really just mean it's 4. This 4th type of journaling I have is my personal favorite. It's something I do whenever I feel the need to decompress, usually when I'm feeling very just like blah, 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 blah. That's a feeling. It's not just a collection of sounds. That was an actual feeling, and you know it. whenever I'm feeling like that, I usually turn to doodle journaling. This is like freestyle journaling. You can write words wherever. You don't have to go in between the lines. You can go sideways. You can do doodles. You can make shapes, pictures, scribbles. Nothing matters. Nothing is off limits. It's just you and the page, and you're just doing something for the sake of this, like, I don't know, giving your mind something to focus on. I kind of think of it as like a Zen rake garden type thing. You know, you're just making your body do something so it can, I don't know, let go of the stress that like all of your thoughts are causing it to hold, if that makes any sense. Whenever I do this, I'm often doodling just like, I don't know, if I'm having a hard time doodle journaling, I always start with a spiral. That is some advice my like elementary school art teacher gave me. You know, if you're ever having some sort of like creative block, start with a spiral and go from there. Honestly, that's why I draw a lot of snails, like a lot of snails, because the spiral always turns into a snail shell. But it's okay because I love snails and I think they're adorable. And because of that, and just all this time in my life I've spent drawing snails, I feel very connected to them and the spiral in general. It's been super helpful for me to just like start that, and you just gotta start like making lines and squiggles and writing random words and sentences, whatever pops in your head. It can be something you did that day, it can be what you ate for breakfast, it can be something you're thinking of, it can just be the most random thing to pop in your head. It doesn't matter. You're just kind of taking the time to let your body chill, get things out of your mind, you know, a little 2-for-1 decompression activity. But I think it ends up being fun. I honestly have accidentally created some like cool art pieces by journaling in this matter. I, in general, really like to combine my art pieces with words. I'll often take my like canvases and like write things over them. So I don't know. I just feel really connected to this style of journaling, and I do think it is the most fun out of all of them. This next type of journaling is video journaling, good old number 5, if you will. I consider this probably my least favorite type of journaling, only because of just like the memories I've associated with it. And it makes sense because this is the kind of journaling I turn to whenever I'm feeling very lonely. And the amount of people in my life that are around me doesn't matter. That has no effect on my loneliness. I think loneliness is the inability to be content with your own company. You are not capable of finding peace in your own solitude, and that is super normal and human to struggle with. But it is like a personal journey. So I know that whenever I'm feeling lonely, it's time to spend some time with myself and talk with myself and figure things out. And it's also really reassuring, especially whenever I was just a single girl living alone. My friends are off living all over the world, across state lines, doing all sorts of things. Even my friends that are in town, you know, we're busy. Being an adult is so much different than being like a student, even if you're an adult and a student at the same time. School just like provides this opportunity for people to like gather as a community, and when that is over, you have to like find your own type of community, and it's pretty challenging, if I do say so myself. And I know that I'm not alone in that, which is very reassuring. But when I do feel alone, because sometimes I am physically alone, I always have my phone and my video camera to talk to. And let me tell you, it is the most vulnerable type of journaling I have ever done, because I'm literally looking at myself, usually bawling my eyes out about something. And I don't know, there's just something about doing that makes you recognize like how everything is truly making you feel. And for me, it kind of like clicks something that's like, oh, I need to like address this because I am an unhappy gal and I just I don't want to be like that all the time. So you've got to work on stuff sometimes. But yeah, fuck. Video journaling is really like a doozy. It's super intimidating, super vulnerable, but also probably one of the most helpful tools I have ever used, especially when I lived alone. Like, it was just a way for me to like be my own friend, be my own support system whenever I felt like I didn't really have anybody else to talk to about certain things, you know, and I don't know, just kind of reaffirms that you are the only person who is always going to be there for you. Like, if you're lucky, you'll have friends and family members who are there to support you throughout, you know, varying hard times in your life, but they have their own lives and sometimes they can't, you know, so you have to be there for you. And it's not easy, but it's doable. And that's just a tool that helped me. So if you find yourself in a similar situation where you're living alone, feeling lonely, struggling in some type of way, you know, I hope that little tidbit helps you out, because it sure as hell helped me. Thank you, Frankie from Grace and Frankie. I know that's a TV show, not a real person, but she does all that video journaling mumbo jumbo, and that's at least what I remember really got me started on it. I could be wrong. It could have been something else, but I'm going to give her the credit for that one. Moving on to number 6, something a little bit more lighthearted, is gratitude journaling. Again, not a revolutionary concept, but I'm here to give you my take on it because that's what this podcast is about. I'm not inventing things. I'm talking about things. Like gratitude. I didn't invent that shit, but I'm sure as hell going to talk about it today. Gratitude journaling is something I have been turning to more and more often recently, when I find myself being just very critical about myself, very critical towards my partner, towards my friends, towards the life that I'm living. I have realized that whenever I am just like wearing those like goggles of judgment that they gave me in Catholic school, just kidding. When I'm looking at life through that lens of being judgmental, I've just noticed the toll, the effect that has on myself and on my relationships, which is really tough. Like, I live with my partner. He's the most wonderful man I've ever been with, and there are a lot of really amazing parts about living with him and sharing a home together, building a life together, all that jazz. However, there are also a lot of challenges that come with that too, and that is, again, very normal, very human, not out of the ordinary for relationships. It's just, you know, a part of it. And I have discovered whenever I accidentally, because I don't do it on purpose, I don't do it intentionally, but I somehow end up like wearing my freaking goggles of judgment, you know, just looking at life through this negative lens, I'll end up just being very critical of a bunch of things that he's doing that, you know, probably don't matter at the end of the day. And I'm trying to be better about just like letting little things like that roll off me. Like, it really doesn't matter. When I find myself just being super critical, I have realized that I need to do the opposite of what all of my thoughts are thinking. All of my thoughts are thinking bad, judgmental things that are just like, you're doing this wrong, you're doing that wrong, this is incorrect, yada, 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 whatever. I'm scared about this, insecure about that, blah, blah, blah. Whenever those thoughts sneak in, I know I need to replace them with better thoughts. So this is kind of where the gratitude journaling comes in. You know, if I'm thinking X, Y, and Z about my partner because I felt like he didn't put the trash bag in the trash can correctly or whatever, I need to flip the narrative and remind myself, like, I am so grateful to have a partner who's taking out the trash, and we have brains that work differently, so sometimes we do things differently. And most of the time, both were great options, so it doesn't really matter. Do you know what I mean? And practicing gratitude in that way has been super duper beneficial for our relationship. Like, surprise, whenever you're writing about all the wonderful, amazing things that your partner does for you, you feel so much more lovey-dovey towards them versus whenever you're wearing your goggles of judgment and you're looking around your house for all the things that they did incorrectly to nag at them about. You know what I mean? It just makes the biggest difference in how we exist from our day-to-day lives and how we interact with each other. And I just want to do everything I can to show up as a more supportive, more loving person in the partnership that I'm in all of my relationships, actually. But, those ones are super close and intimate. You spend so much time together. I definitely want to, be something that makes his day brighter rather than just like this like nagging energy that's like really annoying. I want all of the annoying things I do to be considered endearing because I'm adorable, and frankly, when I'm complaining and nagging all the time, I'm not very adorable. So I think you get the gist in that one. And our final way of journaling is kind of just very, very similar. Journaling via affirmations, just writing things that combat any intrusive thoughts that might be sneaking in, can be super duper helpful. I guess, yeah, these can both kind of be just like grouped together as just, correcting the thoughts that are popping up in your head. Like if you're having all of these critical, negative, intrusive thoughts, journaling, the correct opposites that are actually present in your life can be so much more helpful to put on, some goggles of positivity, some rose-colored glasses, if you will. It's important to not be like overly positive, toxically positive, view things as better than they are. That's not very great, but to view the good things for what they are so you can like help overcome the bad things that you're also seeing can just be so game-changing, I think. And, journaling is just a way that you can do it yourself without help from anyone else. These are just like different ways you can support yourself whenever you feel like you need it. And like that's the main thing I was trying to get to whenever I was saying that like journaling every day is bullshit. Like you don't have to hold yourself to that expectation. Hold yourself to the expectation that journaling is a tool that you can use when you feel like you need it. And for me, I feel like I need it when I'm feeling overwhelmed, when I'm feeling super emotional, whenever I'm feeling super negative, critical, lonely, whatever. If I'm feeling any of the negative feelings, I have figured a like method of journaling that can make me feel a little bit better. And I'm a happier human now that I have all of those, tools in my tool belt to help me tackle life's blah, blah, blah. I'm better for it now that I have all of those tools in my tool belt so I can tackle life and all of life's issues that it throws my way because they never seem to cease to exist. So that's cool. Thanks, life. But yeah, I hope that was helpful in some way, shape, or form. And now we're just gonna go ahead and move on from the journaling chit chat. I think I did enough of that. I think you get the gist of what I was trying to portray. So we are just gonna wrap up the hippy dippy grounding chit chat with some thoughts on resting and recharging. A little bit of redundancy might be a part of this conversation, but that's only because I think some of these things are really, really super duper important. So, as far as like doing a reset goes, I think that, like a weekly reset or just like whatever timeline works for you of, tidying up your space can be really, really game changing. I find that I automatically feel overwhelmed and flustered if there's clutter everywhere. Like not even necessarily if like my house is dirty. I mean, kind of, if you don't do a chore for a really, really long time and it builds up to become this like huge thing, that can be really overwhelming too. So I guess all to say that like regular chores and regular tidying up can just, I think it's a practice that just really sets you up for success at the end of the day. And I think that it is like probably, I don't know, to me it's the most important part of like my weekly reset when That's something that is a part of my weekly routine. I'm feeling really good. When it's not, I'm usually struggling and feeling overwhelmed. So these are just little things in life that I am taking note of, what I do, how it makes me feel. And, I try to keep that lesson in mind for the next time I come across a similar situation so I can maybe do things differently and do myself a favor by making life easier for myself rather than harder. I really want to set myself up for success because I know what it feels like to not. And it sucks, if I'm being honest. And I just think that doing like a reset of the physical space that you exist in can be really grounding. Again, it just helps you keep a clear mind, which allows you to tackle everything else a little bit better. Moving on to the more like fun half of things, the recharge. These are things I really try to accomplish on my Sundays or my weekends or whatever, some resting and recharging. This is what's going to help me be successful throughout the week. At least that is the goal at the end of the day. But the two main things that leave me feeling recharged, can you guess them? Yeah, you're right. It's creating something, because I don't know, engaging that side of my brain just allows me to check out everywhere else. I am no longer thinking about all the other things that are stressing me out. If I'm creating something, I'm not thinking about chores. I'm not thinking about work. I'm not really thinking about relationships either. I'm just thinking about like the task at hand and, how I can like stack the building blocks that are my ideas on top of each other to create some sort of artistic creation. I don't know. You get what I'm saying. Something I've really been into to like really recharge is just like doing carefree painting. I've been meaning to get like just a notebook that I can paint in again. I used to have one, and I definitely just painted a lot more often when I did, because alternatively, in times like these days where I only have like big physical canvases, I feel like I have to have like a special project in mind to like put it on a canvas, because then it's like real, it's big, it's like official in my head, versus like something that's just in a notebook that can just be practice and whatnot. And if it ends up being really, really amazing, you can take it out of the notebook and you can frame it, and then it can be like a thing anyways. All to say is I need to buy a new notebook to paint in so I paint more often, because just doing my little like color swirls is literally like another Zen rake garden. Maybe I should just get one of those Zen rake gardens to really like test out if what I'm saying is true. But I call them Zen strokes. It's just some fun swirls, some lighthearted crafting artistry that just calms my brain a little bit, makes me feel recharged, which is really, really lovely and important, I think. So in the second way I like to recharge, which I'm sure you probably also could have guessed, is just implementing nature time into the routine. I'm a big fan of bird watching. I'm a big fan of cloud watching, lake watching, tree watching, watching of any sort of wildlife, flora or fauna, really. I just think that there is something special to being a part of the energy that nature is like emanating from itself. Just like the stillness and the silence is just so beautiful, so calming. There is truly nothing like it. And I always feel better. I always feel more recharged whenever I have those days. My boyfriend and I went to like a little park that had some ponds and stuff the other day, and we just sat there. I took some pictures. He read a book. I told myself I would read. I always have the intention of reading, but I brought my camera along, and that's just the more exciting toy. So obviously I didn't touch a single page on a book. I just took pictures the whole time. But I'm pretty excited. I've gotten really into like long range wildlife photography these past few months, and it has been just so peaceful. And after it, like, we got home at like 3:00 or something. It was like a half day for us, give or take. And usually you're pretty like tired after travel and whatever, but since we did just like a short burst whenever I got back, I was like ready to go. I just did chores, I tidied up the house, I made like a real nice home cooked meal, and like I had the energy to do it. It's not like I was like forcing myself. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna do all these things. And I don't think I would have had that same energy if I didn't go and have a nature day that day. You know what I mean? I think that everything I did that week just would have tired me out, and if I didn't go hang out at a lake that day, I probably would have ended up cooking some sort of frozen meal or ordering pizza or something a lot more simple. But yeah, it just left me feeling so recharged. And I'm not saying that these are the like key answers for you guys. These are my answers to recharging. Creating things, spending time in nature, that's what makes me feel recharged. And I'm just here to say that it's important to find whatever that is for you, and to make sure that you are engaging in these hobbies frequently. Like at least weekly, you should be doing something for yourself. Ideally daily. You know, we only live this life once. We should be enjoying as many days as possible and be spending our time doing fulfilling things as often as possible. But being an adult, sometimes things get in the way, and I get that. So, you know, whatever works for you works for you. All to say is that you should just really give it a gander. Just figuring out, just maybe taking some time to journal about whatever it is that makes you feel recharged, so you can start doing that a little bit more often. You know, that would be just using all of today's life lessons together as one, and it might be life-changing. You never know. So give it a gander. That's what a babe would do. Alrighty, that is all I have for today's meat and potatoes. This has been a super fun conversation. I definitely feel like trying to stay grounded and whatnot is a very hippy-dippy thing to do, but it is also a way that I live a peaceful life, and I would like to share my strategies with the world so you can hopefully live peaceful lives as well. That's the goal, anywho, for all of us. I would love for you to join us again next week for our Thanksgiving episode. We will be chit-chatting about holiday stresses, good food, yada yada yada, things about the holidays. It's gonna be a grand time, per usual, and I hope to see you there next first Friday. If you don't want to miss it, now would be a great time to go ahead and follow and subscribe. That way my video will come to you. You will not have to seek it out. You know, it's just, things will be easier that way. Just give it a gander. And if you're looking for more content from me somewhere, somehow, some way, shape, or form, you can go ahead and check it out in the show notes, and I'm sure you'll find a link to somewhere. I think I maybe mentioned in the previous episode that I have also added on a discount code to my Etsy shop. You know, Christmas is coming up here and again. I don't know if you have anybody who needs like a housewarming gift or something like that, but I have digital landscape prints for sale on my Etsy shop. And yeah, I have a discount code especially for you, the babes of the podcast. If you want to support me in that way, I want to help you do it. So that's there for you if you're interested. Other than that, that's all for today. So thank you so much for being here. I am eternally grateful for your support. And until next time, bye babes.